Hello everybody, Dark Skeleton here, and in this video I'd like to answer the question, what is a TCG? So a trading card game is what that stands for, but what is the difference between a trading card game, because obviously it's played with cards, and just any old card games such as poker or maybe Go Fish? Well, the main difference is that in a TCG, regardless of how the game is actually played, you can collect these cards, and generally you do that by buying booster packs, and these booster packs might have 9 cards in the case of a game like Yu-Gi-Oh!, might have 5 cards in the case of a game like Hearthstone, which, if you don't know, Hearthstone is one of the main games I like to talk about on this channel and is actually a computer trading card game. So while technically you're unable to trade these cards in Hearthstone, it's still considered to be a TCG because you're still collecting the cards, so the trading component can be optional. How Hearthstone gets around trading is instead you're able to disenchant cards to get dust to build other cards. But the main concept there is that there are many different cards you can collect in the game. And how they keep these games going for more money and keeping players around is that they will release expansion sets. So with these expansion sets, they add in a new series of cards to the game. So the difference between these cards and what you would think of as a normal trading card like a 9 of Hearts is that these cards are all different from each other. Depending on the TCG, you might have cards that are spells that cast magic. You might have cards that represent monsters or minions. And it can even be weapon cards. Or in some games, you would have land, such as Magic the Gathering, perhaps the most popular TCG. And there are also a bunch of field cards. That's the worst stuff I've ever drawn. Yu-Gi-Oh! Has cards like trap cards, which are cards that activate when your opponent does a specific action. But what all of these have in common is that they're unique from each other, and that if you want to complete the collection, you're going to have to go buy a whole bunch of different packs out there in order to make that happen. Now, here's where it kind of sucks for the average player. If you want to also be competitive in a game like Hearthstone, Magic the Gathering, or Yu-Gi-Oh!, you really need a lot of those cards. So what they'll do is they'll make the rarest cards the best cards. So by doing that, it ensures that the top 1% of players, the ones who are really willing to dedicate everything to the game, including money and time, will have the strongest decks and be able to win the greatest percentage of time. Now, that in itself isn't so bad, but it does make these a lot less accessible. So, accessibility to the newest players. So, in short, if you are a new player and you go join one of these games that has been established, you are going to get wrecked. You're not going to have a very good time initially because other people will just be playing on another level. You could kind of compare that to poker. People take poker strategies and they calculate mathematically the best way to win at the game, while the average person who just wants to play poker for fun has a very difficult time because those players that have mathematically calculated every possibility know exactly what to do at which times, which hands to fold on. And likewise, in a TCG, people will know how to play their cards better. And it might be even more relevant in a TCG because you have what's called deck building. And this is one of the other main components of a TCG. Because your deck does not equal someone else's deck. In some TCGs, you can even have more cards than the other. Now, that might not be a good idea in all cases. In fact, it's usually not considered a good idea because the less cards you have in a deck, the better your odds of drawing the right card at the right time are. But there's other ways to build decks just by having different kinds of cards in there. You might have more spells than you would minions. you might have the ability to generate a lot of lands, resources, or mana, depending on whatever system you're playing on. They tend to have a resource for playing all your cards. And why they would have a resource is some cards might have better stats than the other one. So something that's like a 30-30, let's just make up imaginary stats here, might cost 4 times as many resources as like let's just say a minion or a monster with 5/5 of stats. So that's one way you keep the cards in balance. It's harder to play these cards, but these weak cards, although they're weak, they can get you an earlier advantage because you're able to play them easier, you have less conditions to set them up. And why are you even playing these minions to begin with? These creatures, these spells, what's the goal to accomplish in all of this? Well, in most TCGs, it's basically to beat your opponent. Now, how do you do that? Usually by reducing their life total to 0. When life equals 0, you win. Now, this doesn't apply to all TCGs, but most of the popular ones, we're talking Hearthstone, Yu-Gi-Oh!, Magic the Gathering, even you can consider Duelist, which is a new computer TCG, all revolve around knocking your opponent's health to 0. Now, your opponent might be represented by a hero, and in some cases the hero can do really cool stuff like swing a sword or cast magic himself. It all depends on the system. But ultimately, you're creating these decks with cards you get out of booster packs in order to make a deck that can beat your opponent, reduce their life to 0, before they reduce your life to 0. And whether it's a computer game or it's actually a physical card game where you're going out and buying the real physical product, it's irrelevant. They're both TCGs. They can be a lot of fun, but they can also be cost prohibitive to get into. So if I was to recommend one you go ahead and check out, obviously I'm a big fan of Hearthstone. You can download that for free and give it a shot. In any case, I've been Dark Skeleton, and I hope you enjoyed taking a look at this introduction to what a TCG is with me. If you like this kind of video, let me know, and I can make more of them for other types of things. But in any case, I'll see you in my future videos.